All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about some of the remaining free agents and potential fits for these teams. So let's get right into it. I have about, let's see how many players we got. We got 7 players here. This is from an article that I saw, so I just wanted to touch upon it and give you my thoughts. So the first player is Stephon Gilmore. So, past couple of seasons, he's kind of bounced around a little bit. Played with the Colts, then he was with the Cowboys. So, he's still out there. And the potential fit they had was the Patriots. And obviously, he spent some years there, played really well for them. Won a Super Bowl championship with them as well. I think he had the interception in the Super Bowl against the Rams. But yeah, was a productive player for them. He's getting older. He's 33 now. But, I think he could be a guy that, again, doesn't have to be your top corner. But, I think he could still be productive. And the Patriots could be a good spot. I think, for the most part, the defense is still intact. I mean, I think what they really have to work on is, the offense. But, I think getting Stephon Gilmore on a cheap deal, you obviously have Christian Gonzalez, who's working his way back. Their rookie that they drafted in last year's draft. So, I think, I don't see that being a bad fit. Again, it's getting older, but, I see that definitely being a potential fit just because of the familiarity that's there. So then the next player is Jadeveon Clowney. Now, the potential fit they have is the Dolphins. And the Dolphins, they've released some guys. Christian Wilkins and Emmanuel Ogbah, Xavier Howard. There's been a lot of guys that they had to let go. They lost Anthony Van Ginkel to the Vikings. So, yeah, they did, bring in Shaq Barrett. They brought in Jordan Poyer. So they have brought in guys to, at least somewhat replace what they had to let go. Clowney, again, he was the top pick in his draft, and he didn't live up to that, but you know what? He still ended up turning out to being a good player, and the Dolphins I think could be a good spot for him. Actually, he's coming off of a season with the Ravens where he had 9.5 sacks, so that's not bad. How old is he now? Actually, he is. Clowney is 31 years old. But yeah, coming off a season, 9.5 sacks, 43 combined tackles. I mean, again, the Dolphins, they had to make a lot of moves this offseason to, help their cap situation. So I think Clowney could be an okay fit. Probably going to get him on a cheap deal. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But yeah, that's a potential fit. Then you also have Julian Blackmon, a safety. Potential fits the Buffalo Bills. And yeah, another team that made a lot of moves. They let go of Jordan Poyer, who's now with the Dolphins. Again, they're another team that had to, let go of some guys because of their cap situation. They let go of Tre'Davious White as well, who's going to be meeting with teams. So, they need safety help. Micah Hyde is, a free agent. And, so Julian Blackmon could be a possibility for them. So we'll see what ends up happening there. You also have another safety in Justin Simmons. A potential fit for him is the Indianapolis Colts. He's still out there. The Colts, this would be an upgrade for them on defense. He had a decent season for the Broncos last year. So, yeah, I mean, I could see that as well. But then you got a trio of offensive players. So you do have Ryan Tannehill, who's still out there. And a potential fit for him is the Denver Broncos. And the Broncos right now, they have Jarrett Stidham, and I think they also have Ben DiNucci on their roster. They definitely have Jarrett Stidham, but at least last time I checked, the other quarterback that they have is Ben DiNucci. Now, I mean, the Broncos are probably going to end up drafting a quarterback, I would imagine. I mean, I don't think you're going into the season with Jarrett Stidham being the franchise guy. And Tannehill is still out there. I mean, you could plug him in, and he could be that stopgap quarterback. Again, I'm not expecting Tannehill to put up big numbers wherever he goes. I think at this point he's kind of looked at as, a backup, or like I just said, a stopgap guy. Got replaced by Will Levis, last season, and yeah, he's going to be looking for a new home. And when the Titans first got him, he replaced Marcus Mariota. Did very well. But it, it's kind of declined over the years, and especially with AJ Brown getting traded and things like that, kind of led to Tannehill now being where he is right now as a free agent. So and the other thing too is, if somebody gets hurt, Tannehill's definitely someone that could be called upon. So, the Broncos. I don't know. Again, they're probably going to draft a quarterback, I would imagine, but I don't know if I'd go into next season with Jarrett Stidham as my starter. I would probably take Tannehill over Jarrett Stidham, but again, it's not really that much of a debate. But so that's a potential fit for him. Then you got a couple of wide receivers. You got Odell Beckham Jr., so the Chargers are a potential fit for him. Again, familiar with the area, played with the Rams, of course. Again, you could probably get him on a cheap deal. And the Chargers right now, they kind of gutted their whole offense. There's no more Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Gerald Everett. And people forget this, Gerald Everett's actually with the Bears, which I honestly didn't realize until looking at, when they, one of the Instagram accounts, I think it was CBS, they posted all the new Bears weapons, and Gerald Everett was on there. So Everett and Keenan Allen are there. Mike Williams is now with the Jets. Eckler's with the Commanders. And yeah, the Chargers are going to look very different next year. And Odell, getting him on a cheap deal. Again, I guess you're adding another playmaker, but it's just he's not the same Odell that he once was. Injuries really derailed his career. Again, showed flashes with the Ravens, don't get me wrong, but he's not the same player. But again, he's not going to command a ton of money, so maybe the Chargers can bring him in on a cheap deal. And you're playing with Justin Herbert, and I know Justin Herbert's been getting a lot of criticism because he really hasn't won anything. The talent is there with Herbert, and listen, they should have won that playoff game against the Jaguars. They were up 27-0, and that falls to the feet of the head coach at the time, Brandon Staley. But yeah, he also is part of the blame too, Justin Herbert, because the offense really just was not doing much in the second half. But I'm hoping for a big year out of Justin Herbert to prove the doubters wrong out there, because there definitely are some doubters. But Odell, I think, helps because they're definitely going to draft a receiver. Now, I think the other thing that was talked about when I went on Manny's show yesterday was, well, could the Chargers potentially trade down and get more assets? Yeah, it's possible, because this wide receiver class is loaded, and maybe you go after someone in the late first round if you end up trading down. Or if you really like a guy that's there, if you really like the top wide receivers that are there, odds are you're not getting Neighbors, you're not getting, maybe you're getting Neighbors, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is most likely going to be the top wide receiver taken. But yeah, if you can get Neighbors, if you get a Dunze, if you get Brian Thomas Jr., it's possible. But maybe you want to trade down and get more picks. That's also possible. Because right now, it's Quentin Johnston, it's Joshua Palmer. Those are your wide receivers. And then I think Darius Davis is the number 3 wide receiver. So, yeah, they need to add to that. They can't go into next year with just those guys. So, and then on top of that, you got to, address the running back position, because you did bring in Gus Edwards, but you got to bring somebody else in too. It's not going to just be Gus Edwards, man in the backfield. He did a nice job last year, but you need somebody else to complement him. So we'll see what ends up happening. So Odell, potential fit could be the Chargers. So Then the last player here we got is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is still out there. Now, potential fit for him is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers traded Deontay Johnson. Me personally, I think they're going to end up drafting a receiver at some point because they do like to do that. They did sign Van Jefferson, but I think Tyler Boyd is going to be a good signing for whoever ends up getting him. He was kind of that. He became the third wide receiver, with T. Higgins and now Jamar Chase, of course. Again, curious to see what ends up happening with him because now with the Bengals, they could potentially trade T. Higgins if, he requested a trade. And, Tyler Boyd being a free agent, if you lose both of those guys, it's that hurts your offense. Now, of course, you have Jamar Chase, who is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But again, you still want to have some of these guys around. But at the same time, can't keep everybody. And, Tyler Boyd in 2018 and 2019, he had over 1,000 yards. But, his receiving yards slowly started going down. But, that's because, they drafted T. Higgins, then you draft Jamar Chase. In 2021, he still had 828 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. But, then he had 5 touchdowns in 2022. Then he had 762 receiving yards. And then in 2023, 667 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. So, the receiving yards, actually receptions have gone down. But 2021 he had 67, then he had 58 in 2022, and then 2023 he had 67 again. But I think wherever he ends up, I think he's going to be a good fit. We'll see who ends up bringing him in. Again, I'm not going to mention my team, but I would take anybody, really. But I think the Steelers, you're staying within the division. They kind of need another receiver, so I think he could be a decent number 2 to George Pickens. The jury's kind of still out on George Pickens being a true number 1. So, again, we'll see what happens. I'm curious to see where he could potentially end up. So, but let me know what you guys think. Where do you think these remaining free agents could potentially end up? What do you think about the potential fits for these players? So before I go into our second break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCPodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. Okay, so we didn't say the old link. We're good. Eventually we'll be good with that. We won't be making mistakes, but it's just it keeps happening. This is the second time it happened. The show's been great so far today. But so when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about Aaron Donald's comments on his retirement, what he had to say, and that is what we will do when we come back from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.